will not be supporting this legislation.
To McIndoe.
Mr Speaker, it seems to be my permanent lot in the current Parliament to follow Mr Chevelle every time I speak in a debate.
That's literally and figuratively.
He's a thoughtful member. In fact, I have to say my mother, who's probably watching at this moment, she's a bit of a parliamentary addict, seems to think that Mr Chevelle gets every speaking call that the opposition is allocated. But be that as it may, I think that this bill needs to be seen in the wider context of the government's commitments to putting victims at the heart of our justice system. And that isn't just a slogan. That is a very real commitment, and I think it's something that the New Zealand public are very anxious to ensure that we can achieve. National is firmly committed to building a safer New Zealand. It's one of our core commitments that we campaigned on last time. It's a core focus of our Better Public Services strategy. And we have embarked on a very comprehensive program of reform in order to protect communities, to prevent crime, and, as I say, to put victims first. So, as we look at this particular bill, which I acknowledge actually is quite a long time in evolving, we need to remember that that is very much a core focus of it. And I just remind that Mr Chevelle of that in light of some of his previous comments. It's aimed at striking the right balance between retaining support for victims while at the same time maintaining fairness to prisoners. The latter part of that equation is often not a very popular point with the wider public, but nevertheless, in a civilised and decent society, it is something that we should pay due respect to. I think it's important for those who may not have been listening to this debate before the dinner adjournment just to explain that the bill makes the existing regime, which is due to expire on the 1st of July next year, a permanent one. And as I've said, this issue is one that requires balance, sensitivity, and a clear explanation given the strong public interest in matters of compensation. And that's always something that strikes a lot of public comment whenever compensation, particularly for prisoners, is in the news. The Prisoners and Victims Act of 2005, and of course that was a measure of the previous government, responded to the concern that offenders shouldn't receive compensation for wrongful treatment without first repaying the debt that they owe for the harm that they caused their victims. And I would imagine that there would be widespread support for that particular sentiment. It's important that victims continue to have an easy way to make a civil claim if prisoners do receive compensation payments. And the whole point of this new bill is to ensure that the system is fair, balanced, and won't lead to unintended injustices. Because after all, victims of crime are in the system entirely without any fault, entirely without any choice in the matter. They have to deal often with considerable financial, emotional and physical effects of crime long after it has been committed. In fact, we know that there are many who are permanently traumatised by that experience. So provisions for better compensation of victims have been an absolute priority for this government. I have to say that fairness isn't possible because the only thing that could possibly be fair for them not to have become the victims of crime in the first place. But I am pleased and proud that National established a victims compensation scheme in our previous term in office. A few people mocked at the establishment of the $50 offender levy on all offenders regardless of the crime that they commit. But I'm delighted to say, Mr Speaker, it's been an unqualified success. It's worked incredibly well. In the first year, considerably more was taken in that hadn't been expected, and it is a levy that is in addition to any sentence or court order that is imposed. And we've used that new levy to expand services and support for victims of crime, particularly of serious crimes, and their families. More than 4,000 victims or their families have received extra support in the first year of the levy. And the levy has funded 13 different services for victims of serious crime. There's quite a lot that it's gone towards. And we've also taken numerous steps to protect victims. 6,000 families have been protected through police safety orders. Victims now have more say in impact statements, and that's something that they warmly welcome in the court system. We're improving the victim notification system and setting up a victim centre to improve the information and services that victims receive. So, Mr Speaker, as I say, this is a measure that needs to be taken in the wider context. It is about trying to get the balance right. I dare say, and particularly having listened to the comments that Mr Chevelle has made, that there'll be some submissions and we'll take careful note of them when it comes before the Select Committee. But I believe that this is a measure that will enjoy widespread support, and I welcome its introduction this evening.
Mr Speaker.
Honourable Phil Goff.
Mr Speaker, it's with some regret